Hello, everyone. This is Steven Byrnes with Breven Homes, and this is the Building with Breven podcast. We're back for episode number 22, which seems crazy to say, but this is a special week. I've got my father, also a member of our family-run business here, and his name's Mike Byrnes, for those of you who have not listened to a podcast with him yet. Yeah, we're excited to have him on the podcast. So, Dad, what number is this for you?
Podcast number 3 for me, Steven.
Awesome.
Very honored to be here.
Awesome. Well, we're always honored to have you, and you're a listener favorite, I can assure you. Looking at the analytics, your episodes always get good listens. So, and it makes sense. You have a ton of experience, and it's always good knowledge when people are willing to take the time to listen to episodes with you on them. So with that being said, quick introduction of Mike, my father. He's been in the home building business for over 30 years now, and he's built hundreds of homes. He has taught high school and college aged students to not only build homes and read blueprints, but to continue on in the trade space and the trade industries, which is a huge benefit to us as a builder, and constantly trying to increase the trade. So, yeah, I know you've won competitions and awards, and I'm sure there's a lot that I'm forgetting, but yeah, glad to have you here, Dad. Anything I missed?
Hey, great introduction. I appreciate that, Stephen.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, I think without further ado, we're going to jump into this episode. And like I said, this is 22. We've got a special episode this week for our listeners. We've done a lot of talking on other episodes about the pre-construction process and what to look for in a builder contract and how to build a budget-friendly home and value engineering your home and things like that. What we haven't really talked about much is the actual construction process. So when you break ground on a home through handing the keys over in that closing day, which everybody looks forward to, and they can actually move into their new custom home. So this is going to be a fun one. We've broken it down into 7 steps, basically, kind of high-level steps that Mike's going to go into some more detail on each one, and we're going to see how much value we can impart on the listeners. So yeah, I think just jumping right into it, Dad, we're going to start basically once the project has gotten permits approved, if that's applicable in the area that these people are building. And then really the next step after that, once everybody has said, yep, we're good to go, the contract has been signed, the city has signed off on it, and you're ready. What's the first step? What's number one?
Well, after you get the green light and the go ahead, the first thing is the lot prep. You want to make sure that what you've purchased is ready for construction. So if you take it back to I don't know to what point, but you probably would hire a geotechnical engineer to do a core sample of your soil to see what you're going to be putting your house on. I know that the soils in Florida, East Coast, North, very greatly. In Texas, there's a lot of gumbo clay. In Florida, there's a lot of sand. Up north, there's probably some shale, also some clay. So you want to see what you're working with, and before you actually start to design a home or get it engineered for the specific soil conditions of your area. So the lot prep is very important. We're gonna take out the vegetation. We're gonna remove the trees. Anything within 10 feet of the foundation would have to come out. You want to, if you're building a basement, go ahead and excavate at that time. So maybe that's a little bit ahead of the schedule, but the lot prep would be just kind of outlining where the house is going to go, the borders, the boundaries of where it's going to be placed, and kind of just getting that ready to go.
Yeah, awesome. That is definitely the best place to start. And I think, like you mentioned, when you get those core samples, that can be really telling on how expensive your foundation is going to be, if it's even possible to put a certain type of foundation on that lot. It's very telling, and those engineers are needed for many reasons, but your foundation is extremely important, of course, for the structural rigidity of that home, and you want to make sure that you've got a solid footprint there. So.
And also, is it worth building on this lot? From past experience, Breven Homes has purchased lots near the water, or you've had to put 52 12-foot deep bell-bottom piers underneath the foundation. If your budget doesn't allow that, and bell-bottom piers, at least in the South, are $500 or $600 a piece. So that adds up. That adds $25,000 to the cost of the house, and it gives you nothing. So it's nice to know what's under the ground. In other areas, in urban areas, one of the big things is gentrification of the downtown areas. Are taking out old houses and building new houses. And I have purchased a lot where somebody demolished the house and buried the remains of that house on that lot. So you had to clear a bunch of debris out from underneath the house before you could build on it. So yeah, that geotechnical report can be very important to know kind of what you're building on.
Absolutely. And we laugh about it now, but that's an awful thing to experience once you've already purchased a lot, you've got your hopes up, you've designed a home, you've fallen in love with everything, and then sure enough, you get some sort of report back, or worst case scenario, you don't even do it because the jurisdiction you're building in doesn't require it. And you realize it the hard way once you start digging that foundation, and you've already spent a lot of money and a lot of time. And so anyways, yeah, I think the more prepared you can be at the lot cut phase, the better. And the other thing with lot cuts, we see it a lot here in Central Texas, or I'm sorry, not lot cuts, I'm getting ahead of myself, but lot prep is a lot cut. And here in Central Texas, we have a lot of limestone, which is a rock, a porous rock, and you can actually cut through it a lot of times, or even scoop through it with a big enough excavator. And that's all part of the lot prep, usually in the very beginning, so you can get a somewhat level pad for your home foundation. So that absolutely all comes with the lot prep phase that we're talking about. So okay, so they've got their lot prep, Dad. What's the next step?
Foundation time. Once you have the lot prepped, you might want to call for a survey to mark the corners of the house, and maybe you've already done that with the lot prep. But you're going to set your foundation, whether it's a slab on grade foundation, you're going to do a basement, a crawl space, slab on piers, not slab on piers, but maybe it is a slab on piers, but pier and beam, whatever your foundation that you choose for that area based on your geotech, it's ready to go. Set some forms, hire a contractor, and start putting the foundation in.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many different types of foundations, and a lot of times the builder does not select the foundation. The homeowner does not select the foundation. The engineer is going to tell you what kind of foundation you need. Now, a builder or a homeowner can add some insight or some extra support or rigidity if they'd like, but there's going to be a bare minimum that an engineer would be willing to stamp off on from a structural standpoint. And with that being said, it's very, very critical that there's an engineered plan that these foundation companies are following.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, Stephen, you don't want to go it alone here. Once some people, I have people come to me and say, can I build my own home? You can build your own home, but don't design your own foundation. Get an expert's opinion, get a civil engineer or somebody that can read a geotechnical report and put together a foundation for you for your specific purpose. I know up north you have to get below the frost line. How far do you need to go below the frost line will depend on whether you're going to put in a crawl space or a full basement. But those are types of things that it's the single most important part of a house, what it's sitting on. So don't skimp on the foundation and do that right.
Absolutely. And I think maybe we forgot this disclaimer at the beginning, but a lot of our experience comes from building in Texas, of course, right? In Central Texas, because that's our market. That's where we build the majority of our homes. Nowadays, it's where we've built all of our homes, but I know you have some experience building up north, and we've seen homes being built in Florida, California. I mean, all of those different areas are going to have completely different home building styles based on their foundations and their framing and different wind speeds that they have to account for. Like, for instance, Florida has to account for hurricane winds, and California doesn't have some of that, but they might even have some water type stuff that they have to prepare for, like you said, frost lines up north. So we mention all that just because these are very kind of broad steps that people could be aware of whenever they're building a custom home, but we're not going to get into the nitty gritty and try to specify this for one specific area of the country, because we do have listeners in all different states. So foundation, there's a lot to be discussed there, but making
Right.
sure that your foundation is planned properly for not only your soil, so going down subterranean, but also planned properly for going vertical. So whatever's going to be above the grade and the terrain, you need to be able to support that weight and support any wind loads and any other snow loads, even stuff like that, that's going to be imposed on that home. So there's a lot of different factors there. And that's why engineers have very important jobs.
Exactly. Use your engineers. It's a must. And there are so many different, like you said, Stephen, foundation types and styles. Pick one that works, and then get an expert that knows how to do. If you're going to put concrete block subterranean, it's going to have to be waterproof, backfilled with gravel. That's all specific to your area, and hire an expert that knows your area, because it's the most important part of the house.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. I think we hit that one pretty well. So you've got your foundation now. You've prepped your lot, got your foundation. What's the next step after that?
Once the foundation's in, and I'll include the CMUs, the concrete masonry units, the concrete block as the foundation, or the slab on grade, or whatever your foundation is, you're ready to frame. You're ready to drop your framing package and start framing on the house. And what we do is it's all just the spruce, pine, fir, stud grade lumber that we're using to frame houses in the South. And I would assume a lot of it's the same up north. But yeah, you're ready to frame the house. Framing can be either panelized construction. A lot of people call it prefab, and they knock the prefab process. We don't prefab our houses, but there's a lot of advantages to what the quote prefab, or I'll just call it panelization. When a home is built in a factory, in a plant with prefabrication, every nail is in the right place because the machine's putting it in. Your framer isn't working in 30-degree weather and only wants to put one nail in a stud. It's going to get put together accurately, straight, machine led. So the walls are going to come out straight, square, etc. So you're going to get a lot of advantages to a panelization or panelized home. So don't knock the panelization home. Bottom plate's going to be a pressure treated product if it's going to be touching concrete. Top plate isn't going to be double jet, but the framers put it together like a puzzle. It saves on theft. It saves on wasted material. There's a lot of advantages to a prefabrication process. So don't knock it. But in a lot of parts of the country in custom homes, we do stick build is what it's called, one stud at a time. And we don't use trusses. We use rafters on roofs, but you can go to a truss product. So the framing, is probably where the most change happens, where if someone says, boy, that house went up fast. Well, it went up fast because that's where you see the most progress, from a foundation that now it starts to look like a house. Your home is taking shape. The elevation looks like the house you bought. The roof pitches are there. It starts to look like something recognizable. So yeah, that's the framing process.
Yeah, really well said. And to recap a couple of your points, there are different types of framing, surprisingly. I mean, most people are using wood framing. Some people are actually doing metal studs and metal framing components, especially if it's a bigger custom home that has to span some long distances or things like that. There's a weight limits on studs and beams and things like that, which once again, engineers can tell you all that. But yeah, there's metal framing, there's wood framing, there's also even concrete framing now. We're seeing some of that coming up with these 3D printed concrete homes. And so there's a lot of different things that can be considered framing, but that's basically anything that's coming up on top of your foundation that's going to give the structure what we like to call the bones of the home. Basically, it's going to provide that support for the rest of the home. And it ends up between the walls and between your exterior finishes, but that's basically what it is. It's the bones of the home. So yeah, framing.
Yeah, and probably in that category, Stephen, we would add what we call cornice and decking. Cornice would be after the home's framed, somebody has to put in the windows, somebody has to put in the weatherization, somebody has to put in the siding, the exterior doors, put on the roof decking. So that kind of also helps the house take shape. But the cornice, what we call cornice, is the exterior gingerbread type of things that would go on a home, other than the brick or stucco or stone or whatever the exterior product you're going to use on the exterior. But the framing would include the cornice and the decking, and get to a point where we call drying it in.
Yep. Yep, good point. So yeah, that frame stage, which is going to be number 3 on our list as we're covering this, that would include the cornice, which, not to confuse people, but cornice is going to be, think of it as maybe the skin of the home. It's going to be the weatherization on the exterior, the roof, the waterproofing, the windows, the doors, even the details of the outside. So the soffit, fascia, brick frieze, all that good stuff. Any details, any wood products or beams or wooden details, metal details, stuff like that would all fall under that cornice category. And then decking, like you said, is going to be the roof decking. So yeah, that's a good notation there on that phase.
Yeah, and this is where the home gets its energy efficiency. You cannot add energy efficiency after the home is done. This is where the energy efficiency comes in. This is where you wrap the home with Tyvek or house wrap. This is where you put up your foam sheathing or your thermoply sheathing or whatever. Maybe it's going to be a zip system exterior where you're going to have just the one OSB board, 7/16 OSB with a special zip on it where you tape the joints. But this is where you want to make the house airtight. This is where you're going to save a lot of energy in the future if you do your exterior cornice and your house wrap properly. So that would fall under the framing category in this example.
Yeah, good notation there for sure. And another thing on energy, which we'll touch on in a little bit, but is going to be the insulation, which is usually covered after the next phase that we're about to get into. So, okay, so you got your lot prepped, got your foundation poured, you've got your framing up now, including cornice and decking. So you've got the shell of your home and the bones and the structure up. What's next?
It's time for the mechanicals. What we call mechanicals are the plumbing, the heating, and air conditioning, and the electrical, low voltage. So it's ready. It's ready for the mechanical systems to go in. Don't put your air conditioning system. Well, we call it the AC, but it's heating, ventilation, air conditioning. In the South, we air condition homes. In the North, you're going to put in your heating systems, but also air conditioning. But don't put it in until it's dried in. You don't want to put your ductwork in and your air conditioning system in or your heating system in and before it's dried in, because you don't want it to get rained on. The plumbing doesn't matter so much. You can put your plumbing in before there's some roof covering on there, but you don't do that with the HVAC system or the electrical. So those are the next 3 major things that have to go in, where they're going to put all the outlets and where they're going to put all the switches and the ceiling lights and recessed cans and setting the lines for all the hot and cold waters to all the sinks, etc. So all the mechanicals are going to run after you get it dried in.
Awesome. Yep. And some people will call this phase the mechanical rough-in phase. There's the rough-in and then there's the trim out, which we'll cover later. So that's another terminology distinction to cover here. But yeah, this is basically where they're putting all of for sticking with the body analogy. So you have your bones, you have your skin, and then all the mechanicals inside the home, like this, inside your walls, would be basically your arteries and veins, I would imagine. So kind of a determination there. But yeah, so good points. And at this phase 2, this is once all this is done and you've passed inspections and everything is good and the homeowners sign off on things, then you would go ahead and blow your insulation in or put your bats in or whatever type of insulation you have chosen for that home. Sure. That would be the time.
Yeah, insulation's a topic in and of itself. There's so many different insulation types and styles, and there's a lot of discussion and conversations to be had about insulation. But insulation would go in after the mechanicals are all done and everything's been inspected for code, fire. And if you're building it for somebody, the homeowner has signed off on make sure all the plugs are in the right places and switches are in the right places, and nail guards are on electrical wires, so you don't put a nail in an electrical wire. So yeah, the insulation is a nice phase because it means you're ready for the next phase, which we get into, which we would call the phase 2 of the construction process.
Yep. Good segue there. And one thing to note before you get out of phase 1 is it is very important to do inspections at this point. If the city does not require them, if your builder is not going to do them, I would highly recommend a third-party inspection company comes out and looks at everything, because this is where you're about to cover everything up with either insulation or sheetrock. And once that's covered, it's very tough to change things at that point. So if there's any plumbing leaks, if there's any broken wires for the electrical, if the HVAC ducts aren't sealed properly, now is the time to catch that. And it's much, much easier to fix it before the sheetrock goes on than trying to cut holes or dig things up later out of insulation and all that good stuff. So definitely a good time to be doing your phase 1 inspection is what we would call that, end of phase 1.
So should we do a review, Stephen, where phase 1 would be the first 4 parts of building a home? Phase 1 includes lot prep, number 2, foundation, number 3, frame, cornice, and decking, and number 4, mechanical. So we like to separate the house into 2 phases, and phase 1 would be those 4 categories. And like Stephen said, make sure everything's right before you go into phase 2, which would include what, Stephen?
Well, phase 2, we're jumping into phase 2, and that would be the sheetrock. So just like we talked about, yeah, we'd be hanging the sheetrock at that point. You've passed your inspections. The city has passed anything they need to. The insulation is in the walls where it needs to be, and everything is ready for sheetrock to go up. It's a very exciting time of the build. A lot of people can visualize the home a lot better at that point. And it's a really interesting phenomenon that once the sheetrock goes up, the house actually can feel bigger. You get a better perception of the space by putting the ceilings on and the walls, and you've got your boxes all segmented out in the home. So you can see your kitchen, you can see your bedrooms, you can see your bathrooms, all that kind of stuff. So very exciting time in the build, and it really kicks off phase 2 of build. So anything to add on that?
Yeah, that's a fun time. Like you said, that's when the house starts to take shape on the inside. And sheetrock is used. We can use sheetrock or drywall. Tidbit of trivia: sheetrock is the name brand that USG, United States Gypsum, uses for their products. So generically, it's drywall. This is sheetrock is the USG's brand of sheetrock, so they can use that. But you also have to decide at this time: do I want to texture the walls? Do I want smooth walls? Do I want rounded corners? Do I want square corners? Some decisions have to be made there. But the sheetrock process, drywall process, takes a good part of a week to put in all the coats: the base coat, the bed, sand, skim, texture, whatever you're going to do to the walls. It takes about a week to get all that done in an average size house. Bigger homes can take 2 weeks for that process.
Yep. So. Yeah, good note there, because we're going to have a listener that's building a 20,000 square foot home and expect their sheetrock done in a week. So
yeah, that's not going to happen. So I think a 2,000, 2,500 square foot house can be done in week and a half. And it depends on the weather too. If it's humid out and it's been raining, the mud's not going to dry. It's going to take longer. They can't go to the next layer of drywall until the first layer has dried. So that can stop you or slow you down a little bit too.
Yeah, and I think you had some good notes, which I'll let you touch on, but this is the point where the home really kind of breaks into 2 different paths. And that would be an interior path and an exterior path. And a lot of times builders will run those, or they should be running those concurrently, having things going at the same time, because it's very easy to have people working on the exterior of the home while also having people work inside the home and keep the build moving. So we like to do that. We like to keep our builds moving and keep it always active. But you want to touch on that a little bit more? So you've got sheetrock going on inside. What's going on outside?
Yeah, great point. We get asked all the time, how can you speed up the process? Well, there's the critical path to building a home is how quickly can a home be built? You can't do step B before you do step A. So that's the critical path. When you hit the sheetrock drywall stage, then the critical path splits. You can do an inside critical path. So the inside is rolling independently of the outside. This is when you want to put on the siding on the outside, the stucco on the outside, the brick, the stone, whatever medium you're using on the exterior of your home. That's independent of what's happening on the inside now. You can also do lot prep. You can also dig your trenches for your utilities, get your gas line in, get your water line in, get your electric line in to the house. So that's going on independently and separate from the inside. So that'll speed things up. Once all the utilities the lines are run, then you can start on your exterior rough grading, start outlining where the flat work's going to go. The flat work would be your driveway and sidewalks. So and that, if the sooner you get that done, so when the inside is done, you're not waiting on driveways or sidewalks. The house comes together at the same time. So Yeah, good point. That's a good split right when the house is dried in. Mechanicals are done to do the dual critical pass, as I call
Ooh, I like that. I like how you threw the critical path in there.
it. Yeah.
That's something as a builder, you are always thinking about the critical path. What is next? What's going to keep this house moving and in keeping it through production? And yeah, critical path is extremely important in that. There's other things that you can kind of plug in on the side of the critical path, but if that critical path isn't progressing forward, then the home is stalling. So yeah, that's always something we're aware of. But awesome. Well, good distinctions there. And yeah, so we've got run through them real quick again. So we have the lot preps, we've got the foundation down now, we've got the framing done, got the mechanical
Mechanicals in.
installation done, and the sheetrock is now done. And your exterior, we'll say just for this example, your exterior masonry or shell is done, whether that's brick, stone, whatever. What's after that?
Well, it's time for the interior trim. Once the drywall is finished and you have the texture or no texture and smooth walls and rounded corners and whatever you pick, some builders will paint the walls with their latex paint next. But the interior trim, this is when you would get your trim package, put your baseboards in, the interior doors, closets would get finished, any shelving that goes in, cabinets in the bathrooms, cabinets in the kitchen. This is the time when all that goes in for your trim. This is an exciting stage because, again, this is starting to kind of mold what the closets look like, mold what the kitchen looks like, and where the island goes and where the kitchen cabinets are going to go. And so it's a good time to, well, not a good time, it's essential that you get all these trims in. So just the wooden trims, not the mechanical trims yet, but just doing the wooden interior trim with the doors and shelving and baseboard and casings, etc.
Yep, absolutely. And on phase two, this is really where it becomes a giant puzzle. And like you mentioned, there's a critical path that we have to follow, but there's also plenty of other things that can kind of plug and play in different time frames or chronological orders of the build. So it's a fun challenge as a builder. What can I bump up or move back, or what do I need to change as my countertops are back ordered, or I have a light fixture that didn't show up on time, or whatever, right? There's always something, but it's constantly a moving timeline, and you're trying to make everything fit into this timeline puzzle, so to speak. But yeah, good notes on the trim. And the trim too would, in my book, I would say would probably include the paint and the tile as well, so those interior finish outs, like you mentioned, are going to be part of that trim phase. And it's a very exciting time for people to see all their selections come together.
Yeah, very good point. And yeah, you did say it well, that you have to kind of use common sense, but you have to kind of take what's given too. If the painter's behind, maybe you can start the tile process or get some flooring in, because you know that you can't set your toilet until the bathroom tile or the bathroom flooring or linoleum or whatever you're putting in the bathrooms is in. So you're juggling that with the painter, you're juggling that with other issues, countertops. You can't set your sinks until the countertops go in. So yeah, there is a lot of juggling that's going on, but don't hold up the house while you're waiting for something. You could be doing something else, like you said, Steven, about the paint or flooring, things like that have to go in before you run your mechanical trims.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And paint's the messiest part, if you can get paint done somewhat early, because typically when they're painting a home, they are spraying it. And so they're using a spray machine. If you've got anything such as light fixtures or plumbing fixtures or countertops or whatever that should not get paint on them, most likely they're going to get paint on them to some degree. So you want to try to do your paint before all that stuff goes in. So all part of the critical path. And without getting too far into the weeds on these schedule items, I think that's a good segue to the last little note we've got. So after your trim phase, how do you wrap this whole thing up? You've got all your finish outs in. Now what do you do?
Yeah, you're doing the final punch out. You're doing well, all the mechanical trims are in, and Steven said that they're the plumbing, the electrical, and HVAC, everything's trimmed out. It's time to do what we call punch out. And punch out is when you go through the home with a fine tooth comb and you make notes of every little thing that is nicked, scratched, damaged, missing. yet to be completed. Maybe you're waiting on one piece of tile, or maybe you're waiting on a piece of baseboard or molding. You're going to go through the home and make a list of everything that needs to be kind of tightened up that last little bit before you're ready to do the walkthrough with the buyer.
Yep. So the final phase of the home would be that punch phase, or the final phase. Yep. Yeah. And I think we kind of lost track of our exterior timeline, but really what we try to do is, if a home has carpet or anything along those lines, we wait to do the carpet usually in that final punch phase, because carpet goes quick, and it's something that you don't want to have in the home too long, because it's Murphy's Law or Murphy's Rule, whatever, that it's going to get damaged or stained or stepped on with a muddy boot or something like that. So the longer you can hold off on carpet, the better. And then just before carpet, I mean, we try to do our landscaping, so we want to get the landscaping done and the grassing and all that kind of stuff, so that people aren't walking through mud. If they are walking through your yard, which we hope they aren't, but if they are, it's through grass, not mud. So come into the home can stay a little bit cleaner, things like that. So I think overall, I mean, I'm sure we missed some things. I'm sure we've jumped around a little bit, but hopefully this gives listeners a pretty good idea of what to expect with their home build. And one other note is that the final punch phase, just like we did at the end of phase 1, we're going to want to do a phase 2 inspection, whether the city requires it or not. We do, as a builder, we always have our third-party inspector come out and inspect the home. Even if our homeowners are going to pay for an inspection, we still have our company come out and do it. We try to do as many inspections really as we can, and not because we're crazy, but because every set of eyes that you have going through that home is going to find something different. And it's good for us to be aware of it. We typically fix most items, if not all of them, if they're valid items. But definitely something to be aware of, and a good thing to have is another inspection, or a final inspection at the very end. They'll check for all your mechanical systems are completely done, light switches, outlets, light fixtures, plumbing fixtures, making sure there's no leaks, checking your appliances, all that kind of stuff. So those final inspections are very important.
And gas is on. There's not hot water to the toilets.
Exactly.
Just it happens. But the biggest thing is, don't get the cart before the horse at the end. Steven made a great point. Do not put carpet in until the very, very end. This is a common mistake for some of the production builders out there. They just want to throw everything in and then fix it later. But I've seen carpet go into a home before the tile was done, before the mechanicals are finished. There's no reason to do that. And don't let them do that, or don't do it to your home either. It should be, when Steven said, after you do your final punch, put the carpet in, a week and a half before closing. Wait till the very end. Your appliances, the same thing. If you put your appliances in too early, vendors will use the microwave oven for their sandwiches. People will use the oven, or they'll get stolen. So don't be in a hurry to put those things in. Yes, they have to get hooked up, which isn't a problem, but that's the biggest mistake our rookie builders are, putting things in too early and then having them get damaged, and you have to replace them or clean them, and you don't want to do that in a brand new home.
Yep. Yeah, really good points. I mean, theft is unfortunately inevitable on almost every project that you do. I mean, you can put security cameras out, things like that, but job sites are notorious for being a hotspot for theft. So that's a tough situation to be in when you're at the very final finish of the home and you're going through it, and you've got your final walk set up with the buyers, and you walk in and a window's been busted and all your appliances are gone, so that's why we wait as long as we can to install that kind of stuff, and make sure that it's not getting damaged or stolen, just like you mentioned. So yeah, good notes there. But yeah, I think that pretty much hits it all. I would say after that final inspection, and after we have finished the buyer's walk list, which we call it, and our final punch list and all that kind of stuff, we can hand the keys over. It's closing day, and we get to hand over that brand new home that we've built for our clients. And that's really one of the most rewarding days for our job. So it's rewarding. It's an honor. It's something that we never lose track of or lose sight of handing over that house for a new family to make it their home. So it's a cliche saying, but it really is true, and it makes our job worth it. So Yeah, that's a good way to wrap this whole thing up, I think.
Very good, Steven. You couldn't have said it better. You took the words out of my mouth at the end there, and I agree.
Awesome. Well, very cool. Yeah, just want to thank everybody for listening to our podcast. And if you found any value in any of our episodes, we just ask that you like us, share the podcast, and help support us on each platform. I know some of them have ratings, some of them allow comments or replies to questions, things like that. It all helps us. And we just ask that you guys help us out that way so that we can share more knowledge with more people. So once again, thanks for listening. And Dad, thank you so much for being on the podcast once again. We're looking forward.
My honor. Yeah. Look forward to the next one, Steven.
Awesome.